All right, let's jump right in. Today we're going deep on a topic that's making waves. A potential trade war between the U.S. and Canada. You guys have sent in some really interesting articles and online discussions about President-elect Trump's proposed tariffs. And, well, we're here to unpack it all. What could this really mean for you?
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical trade spat. This could have major consequences. We're talking about a relationship that could be totally reshaped.
Right, exactly. It's hard to picture a trade war, between two countries that share the world's longest undefended border. And their economies are so closely linked, right?
Yeah.
But, well, here we are. So let's break down the basics. What exactly is President-elect Trump proposing, and what's behind this really aggressive stance?
Well, he's vowed to slap a 25% tariff on all goods, literally everything, entering the U.S. from Canada and Mexico. I mean, everything. Maple syrup, car parts, you name it. There are no exceptions. It's kind of a power move, right?
Wow, 25% across the board. That's a pretty bold way to start any negotiation.
Yeah.
I imagine that's causing some serious tension up north.
Definitely. And it's not just about economics. It's tied to Trump's broader agenda, especially his focus on migration and drug trafficking. He's pushing Canada and Mexico to do more to stop the flow across the U.S. border.
Okay, so it's like a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cooperate or face the tariffs.
Right, exactly.
How has Canada responded so far?
Pretty united front. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland's made it clear that Canada's not going to just sit back and take what they see as unfair tariffs. And it's not just talk. We're seeing action, especially from Ontario.
Yeah, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, he's been very vocal, even threatening to, cut off energy exports to the U.S. And this is interesting, right? Because Ford and Trump usually agree on a lot of things. So what's his stance telling us?
It shows just how much is at stake. I mean, Ontario's Canada's biggest province. Ford's willingness to play the energy card, even against someone he usually agrees with, well, it means Canada's not going down without a fight. They're ready to play hardball.
And to put that in perspective, Ontario alone powers over 1 million U.S. homes, right? Mainly in places like Michigan, Minnesota, and New York. If they cut us off, what kind of impact are we talking about?
Oh, think about potential blackouts in major U.S. cities, all because of a trade war with Canada. It'd be crazy, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just about the lights going out. There's a whole network of industries and resources that could be disrupted.
So we're talking about possible blackouts, economic chaos, and a huge rift between two close allies.
Yeah.
All right, let's get specific. How reliant is the U.S. on Canada? What exactly is at stake here?
Well, the U.S. gets something like 60% of its imported crude oil, and get this, a full 85% of its imported electricity from Canada. But it's way more than just keeping the lights on. Think about steel, aluminum, even crucial minerals like uranium that our military relies on.
Right.
And don't forget about Canadian lumber, a major part of the construction industry here.
Yeah, so if they cut those off, it'd be like pulling the rug out from under these key parts of the U.S. economy. We could see price hikes on everything, right? Houses, cars, the whole 9 yards.
You got it. We'd see those ripple effects throughout the economy. And remember, this is just Ontario. Other provinces are also saying they might retaliate, maybe withholding key minerals and other resources.
Wow. So Canada is clearly willing to fight back. But is this all talk? Are they really ready to hit their biggest trading partner this hard? What are the risks for them if they push too far?
It's a risky move for both sides. Canada could definitely hurt the U.S. economy, but they'd also be putting their own economy in a tough spot. I mean, the U.S. is their biggest customer.
Yeah, it's a real standoff, like who's going to back down first. But, some people argue that even if we have this trade war, Trump's economic plans will actually help the U.S. in the long run. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's tricky. There are definitely strong feelings on both sides. Some people believe that, yeah, these policies will make the U.S. economy stronger, even with the disruptions. They think it'll boost domestic industries. But others, well, they're not so sure.
So what are the downsides, the things they're worried about?
Well, tariffs often, they can have unexpected consequences. They can mess with those complex supply chains we talked about, which can drive up prices for everyone. And those higher prices, well, they can lead to less demand, which could hurt businesses on both sides of the border.
So it's not as simple as just, protecting American jobs.
No, not at all.
There's a whole domino effect that could actually end up hurting everyone.
Right. And we can't forget about potential job losses. In industries that rely on trade with Canada, it's a delicate balance. The risk of economic trouble for both countries, it's very real.
Okay, so even with all that potential fallout, Canada seems ready to stand their ground, but have they given in at all? Are there signs that they might, meet some of Trump's demands to avoid this trade war?
They have made some moves. Canada's been putting more money into border security, deploying more officers, using more tech like drones, even more sniffer dogs at border crossings.
So they are trying to address some of those concerns about migration and drugs, at least. Do you think that'll be enough to satisfy Trump? Or is it just a tiny step in a much bigger fight?
It's hard to say. These concessions, they do show that Canada's willing to negotiate to a certain extent,
Hmm.
but it also shows the pressure they're under, right? They're having to change their policies, their spending because of another country's demands, and, well, that can create resentment.
Yeah, it's putting a strain on the relationship for sure. And it's not just the policy stuff. Things have gotten pretty personal, right? Especially online.
Yeah, definitely. Remember that whole thing between Trudeau and Elon Musk on X?
Oh, yeah. How could I forget? That was something else. Remind us what happened there.
Well, Trudeau made a comment, about how he was disappointed that the U.S. didn't elect a woman president. And, well, Musk, he's a big Trump supporter, right? He jumped on X and called Trudeau insufferable. He even said Trudeau's days were numbered.
Yeah, it was pretty harsh. I mean, these are the leaders of neighboring countries. It felt like a Twitter feud or something.
It shows how quickly things can get out of control, how personal feelings can get mixed up with these complicated global issues. It's a good reminder that diplomacy isn't just about policy and negotiations. It's about managing relationships, those personal dynamics, too.
It's a little unnerving, honestly. We've got all these economic threats, national interests, personal clashes all happening on this global stage.
Yeah.
Where do you see this going?
Well, it raises some big questions, about global alliances, the future of North American trade. Trade wars, they rarely have clear winners. They can change the whole geopolitical landscape in ways we don't expect.
So are we witnessing a shift in global power? The U.S. and Canada going their separate ways, finding new partners.
It's possible. If this trade war keeps escalating, both countries might start looking for other options. Canada could strengthen its ties with Europe, Asia. The U.S. might focus more on South America, Africa.
And that could have massive consequences for everything.
For sure. Supply chains, global prices, even the balance of power. It's a big deal.
It's a lot to take in.
Right.
This could change everything. Two countries that have always been so close, now maybe drifting apart.
Yeah, it really shows how connected we are, how one event can set off a chain reaction globally. And it shows that even the strongest alliances can be fragile. When you have these economic pressures, national interests clashing, things can change fast.
So is this the end? Are we headed for a total collapse of the U.S.-Canada relationship, or is there still a chance they can work things out?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but I think, both countries have a lot to lose if they break things off completely. Their economies are so intertwined, their security, separating all that would hurt both sides.
So there's still a chance for diplomacy to win the day. But in the meantime, it feels like we're just stuck in this mess.
Yeah.
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 There's not much we can do as individuals. Is that the reality?
Well, we may not be able to, control trade policy directly, but we can stay informed, stay engaged. We can, talk to our elected officials, push for policies that encourage cooperation, make sure our voices are heard.
So it's about awareness, staying informed, making a fuss if we have to. But there's so much information out there. It's hard to know what to believe. Where should we be focusing?
I think it's important to, look beyond the headlines, go deeper than those simple stories we often see. We need to understand the history between the U.S. and Canada, the economic forces at work, the possible long-term effects of this whole thing.
All right, so it's about seeing the big picture. How does this fit into everything else that's going on in the world, right?
Exactly. And I think it's important to talk to people who have different opinions, to have those conversations. We got to move past this us versus them thinking and realize that we're all connected, right, in this global world.
So the key is to be informed, stay involved,
Yeah.
and be open to different viewpoints.
Yeah.
It's not about choosing sides or staying in our little bubbles.
Mhm.
It's about finding good information, having real conversations.
That's a good way to put it. And remember, This is all still unfolding. We got to keep watching to see what happens, stay curious, keep asking questions.
You've given us a lot to think about, and hopefully everyone listening feels a little more prepared to deal with all of this. Thanks for taking us through this deep dive. As things develop, it'll be fascinating to see how this trade dispute plays out, how it affects both the U.S. and Canada. What happens if this trade war really explodes? What new partnerships could emerge? How would that change the world? Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged.